Heck yeah. That recording from the Manchester concert of Oasis. Nice job, Eddie Garrison, dialing that up.
Had to make sure you were welcome back with the right music, Jake.
And you know what? Anytime you can play a little Welcome Back Kotter, I'm cool with that as well. And it is indeed good to be back. And I want to thank Derek Schultz. I want to thank Greg Rakestraw, obviously Eddie, you as well, for filling in and making it possible for me to take a little vacation time over the Colts bye week, but now back in the saddle. And you would say, it's funny, I walked in and, Nathaniel, don't call me Atticus Finch, when I walked in, said, oh, look, you're tan and rested and you look 10 years younger. And I said, I know that that's what you say when somebody comes off vacation, but I will admit to this. I have no idea what time it is because I am jet lagged out the wazoo. Now, I shouldn't just make that excuse up front or ask for that grace up front because I'm coming off a vacation and I should be locked and loaded and ready to go. And I am. And I did pay attention to what was going on in the world of sports here in central Indiana during the time that I was gone. But good afternoon to you on a Wednesday that, to me, I keep thinking it's Monday, so I apologize for that. But I flew back yesterday, and it was very bizarre because just the time change in general when you go somewhere that has that big of a time gap. So I flew back yesterday from Munich, Germany, and we left at 10 o'clock in the morning in Germany, which was 4 o'clock in the morning here. Went through to Charlotte, and then I got back, and by the time I, got settled back in and everything, it was like 8 or 9 o'clock last night. And, I thought, okay, I'm just going to sleep that and get up in the morning and go into work and reset my clock. But my body clock still has not reset, so I woke up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and just, okay, now if I go to sleep now, and I started getting that sleep anxiety. But let me tell you what happened as it relates to sports in central Indiana over those two things that I'm talking about. We leave to fly from Munich to Charlotte. Now, Eddie, let me ask you this. What's the longest flight you have ever been on?
I think 6. 5, 6 hours.
Well, you've gone to Seattle, right? I mean, that's a pretty
and San Diego.
And I think personally, on an airplane,
I guess technically San Francisco.
What do you think for most people is the threshold of the time period on a flight where you're like where finally the anxiety kicks in and you're like enough?
Probably hour 4.
I think that's about right. Yeah,
Two movies in, you're like, yeah, I'm done. Can we get there already?
I think that's right. Yes. So let me tell you what happened as it relates to sports in central Indiana. So the flight from Munich to here, and I think a lot of that when you're going from, when you're going west, depends on how big the headwinds are that you're going into on what the flight time is. Turned out to be a 10.5-hour flight, and that is, I think, the longest flight that I've been on. And so we get on it, and They say to us immediately when we got on the plane, folks, we're going to be, just so you know, looks like a smooth ride all the way across. No turbulence. The map looks great. Everything looks good. Perfect. So we're flying along, and I'm expecting just this smooth flight, and I'll watch some TV and whatever else. Now, I watched a movie. They had every single thing possible on the in-flight entertainment. I watched Full Metal Jacket, which I've only seen 246 times. I watched half of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which I've only seen 247 times. And then I watched The Morning Show. Have you seen The Morning Show with Jennifer Aniston?
I have seen all but the latest season.
Okay. So I had never seen it before.
It's a good show.
It is a good show. And so I went through like the first half of the first season, which I realize is like 6 years old or whatever. Very entertaining show, though. And at that point, doing all of that got me up to like the 5.5-hour mark, and that's when it happened. What was supposed to be this perfectly smooth flight, all of a sudden, we're on a roller coaster ride. Up and down, bouncing all over the place. And Shannon Walsh, who is the greatest travel mate of all time, the one area that is not a strong suit for her is she's a very anxious flyer. And she looks at me and very loudly, so the whole plane can hear it, says, and I'll edit it, I am so over this. I want off this plane, and I want off it now. and there might have been a few expletives splashed in there. And I said, well, here's the only problem, Shannon.
Which one?
There's
a few different expletives.
The big kahuna.
Oh,
okay?
really?
So, and I looked at it and I said, Shannon, here's the only problem. We're literally in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Like, we are, even if they wanted to land somewhere, we're 2 hours from a landing spot probably, so we ain't going anywhere anytime soon. But my point being, it was supposed to be and was anticipated to be a smooth, joyous ride over, I should say, with the underneath being the beautiful landscape of the ocean and the Atlantic Ocean and just beautiful clear skies and sunshine and everything else. That's what it was supposed to be. And it turned out to be totally unexpected turbulence and topsy-turvy all over the place. Then we land. We had to go. We landed in Charlotte, and we flew from Charlotte to Indianapolis. We get on the plane to come from Charlotte to Indianapolis, and the pilot says, hey, listen, the weather in Indy is terrible. There are really bad storms. They're probably going to be moving their way out by the time that we land. However, we probably will not be able to do any beverage service because this is going to be a terribly bumpy flight, and just make sure you have your seatbelt on and everything will be fine, but it's going to be a roller coaster ride. And it was smooth as could be. Literally had no problems whatsoever. Had no problems whatsoever. And then it dawned on me. The first flight that I went on, which is the longer of the two, was the Pacer season. The Pacers season began, and you thought to yourself, yeah, I realize that, like, you have the challenge of no Tyrese Halliburton, kind of like the challenge of no landing spot when you're midway over the Atlantic. But you're expecting at the outset of it that everything's going to be smooth, and you have a very clear map and forecast as to what things are going to be, going into it. And then all of a sudden, when the turbulence hits, it was literally, when you're turbulent on an airplane, you have no idea when the next bump is coming. And yes, I realize to now, for the listeners, it's been seemingly months since Aaron Nesmith got hurt. I know it hasn't been, but so that's old news here. But the injuries just keep coming. I realize Matherin's back, but you have Nesmith now out, and it just seems to be it's just a season that you just cannot get any stability, despite the fact that you anticipated it was going to be fairly smooth sailing over the course of the year, even though there was no Halliburton. And then the second flight, which is shorter, not 82 games, but a 17-game schedule, that one was one that was expected to be bouncy and ugly and keep your seatbelt on, and it was as smooth as could be with very little issue whatsoever. And I thought, that right there is the Indianapolis Colts. Because whoever would have guessed, and yes, I realize that you guys talked about it aplenty, and I realize that I'm a broken record when I say whoever would have guessed that this matchup now going into Kansas City to take on the Chiefs in a raucous environment in Arrowhead and all of that, whoever would have imagined that we would be going into this with the Colts not only where they are, but also battling now back to, say it ain't 2005 again, battling with the New England Patriots to stay in contention for that number one seed, home field advantage. Eddie, you were the one person that forecasted New England was a team that was going to be where they are now. And it still feels like with the Patriots, you're like, they're not really for real, right? But I'm sure that's what most people feel about the Colts, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you asked me after that first week, we did Overreaction Monday. And you're like, oh, look at me. You're like, look at me, Eddie. I got the Raider. And the Raiders have gone the total opposite way. I was like, hey, 1 week, not a season make. We got to stick by, got to stick with it. And yeah, the Patriots have been one of the biggest surprises in the NFL, right there next to the Indianapolis Colts. And I was thinking about this, I think last week, Jake, you and I were talking about it off air before you took off for vacation, that it just seems like the Patriots and the Colts have played in the regular season like each of the last 3 to 4 years. And now the 1 year that they don't play each other, they're both back into relevancy.
Right. And look, you don't hear a lot about, New England in general. Just as an example, so on Sunday I was in Munich. We went to Vienna, Austria, Bratislava, Slovakia, Salzburg, Austria, and then Munich. So I was in Munich on Sunday, and as soon as I checked into the hotel, they had the in the hotel bar, they had a huge screen set up for the red zone, and then they had like the NFL game of the week. And the game over there that we saw, it was the Lions game, and then later whatever I guess the Seahawks and Rams. I don't know if that was a primetime game. I have no idea what time of day it was over here. But the point being, even over there when people were, if you think about soccer, for example, from a European level, and you think about the teams that you hear a lot of chatter about in the United States, we hear about Tottenham, we hear about Man U, we hear about Real Madrid, but you don't hear about a lot about Nottingham Forest or whatever. And that's kind of what the New England Patriots are, nationally or internationally speaking. You just have not heard much about them at all this year. And I'm assuming that that's how most people feel about the Colts and the season that they've had. But it is obviously a big-time matchup. Now is when we kind of shift and start looking towards what does happen with that in Kansas City and the vulnerability, the areas where the Colts might be able to take advantage of Kansas City and get themselves a win. But the first thing the Colts need to do is not to the level of the Pacers, but the injury bug there, Mooney Ward being a big one there, right, in terms of Charvarius Ward and his availability. The story with DeForest Buckner, I'm assuming you guys touched on that, of when you're talking about a player that is going over and getting stem cell stuff done on his neck, that typically I started getting, when I saw that headline, that DeForest Buckner thanked a stem cell, whatever you want to call it, medical facility for that procedure, for that therapy. I don't know. And Ralph Reif is going to join us on the show, and that's going to be a really interesting conversation, because when I hear stem cell and a player going and getting stem cell treatment, I remember how kind of quietly whispered and speculated and eyebrow-raising it was when we found out that Peyton Manning had the same, and I don't remember if it was ever confirmed that Peyton Manning had stem cell things done on his neck when he had the fusion issue, and I think stenosis is what it was called, when he was coming back from the nerve damage that ended his time as a Colt, obviously, and then he ended up in Denver before it finally regenerated and got to the point where he could get back to playing. But when at that time there was all this rumor and speculation that Peyton Manning had done stem cells, and I can't remember whether or not he definitively, we found out, did do that, or it was just linked to it, but it was very, even as recently as that, so we're talking within a decade and a half, the stem cell stuff was kind of a new frontier. And at that time, when an athlete would undergo that sort of a procedure, it was scrutinized as like a desperation, or wow, like this guy's doing anything now he can to be healthy. I don't think that that's where we are now in 2025. I think it's probably and again, people in the medical profession will be able to speak to this far more than I. But it seems, Eddie, you tell me if I'm wrong, like we hear more about it now than we did at one time.
Yeah, it seems more common now, and I'm interested to hear what Ralph Reif has to say on the pros and the cons of doing stem cell treatment and why an athlete may want to do that versus just letting the healing process play out in its own right.
And what country did he go to get it done?
Panama,
because I know in Manning's case, at that time, it was rumored to be Europe, if I'm not mistaken. And I can't remember where in Europe, but that was always the big thing, is that players would go over there because their medical procedures, were different and they could get it done and whatever else. So DeForest Buckner, he is such a critically important part of their defense. Now, I do think that having and the acquisition of Sauce Gardner helps out in that. With Buckner not there, and we saw this already, with Buckner not there, I thought that, for example, Atlanta was able to kind of take advantage of a softness, if you will, within the pressure to the quarterback, but you could make up for that with Sauce Gardner there and the way that you could maneuver around that. But let's get more into that. Joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Java House, critically important today because I am so jet lagged. I've had a total of like 9 hours sleep in 2 days. That's on me, not on anybody else. But the Java House coffee coming very in handy. Java House Peel and Pour guest line, Joel A. Erickson from the Indianapolis Star. Joel A., let's get right to, by the way, what's the A stand for again, Joel?
Anthony.
Anthony. Can I just call you Joel Anthony? Isn't there an NBA player, Joel Anthony? Am I wrong in that?
Maybe.
I thought there was
that sounds right.
I think there was like some point guard, Joel Anthony.
There's Cole Anthony.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
There was a Joel Anthony that played with the Miami Heat.
Yeah, that's it. Right?
There we go.
Is he a point guard?
Center.
Can we just from now on? Can I just call you Miami Heat's Joel Anthony?
I'm fine with that. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Let's get to this though. Health standpoint, where do we stand in terms of? I'll begin with Charvarius Ward and where things stand right now from what you're hearing on availability against Kansas City.
Yeah, they're gonna designate him to return for practice today. He's going to practice today, and I would say based on what we saw before they went to Berlin, I think he's probably going to play. He's been working with a trainer on the field. We've seen all that stuff, and so I think he's probably was getting close to being ready before that. But when you're on injured reserve, you have to miss four games. So I'm kind of expecting him to be out there.
The other defensive player I was just talking about in DeForest Buckner, Joel, and this news that DeForest Buckner, and I realize this is not new news, but I was gone. But the news of the stem cell and his neck injury and getting stem cell treatment. To me, I'm still like old school enough that when I hear that, I think to myself, oh, wow, this is a player like going to his last end to get treatment on something because he's worried that nothing else is taking. Now, this is clearly a newer injury for him. What was your reaction, or what seemingly is the reaction we should have about what that means of him getting the stem cells?
Well, the biggest thing is that Buckner has done this before. He did it last year when he had the sprained ankle. When he did the high ankle sprain, he went to Panama for the exact same treatment to try to stimulate recovery. I think the biggest thing is maybe not the stem cell piece of it, but just the fact that DeForest Buckner's not injured reserve at all is a suggestion that this is a very serious injury, because Buckner in his career here has played through a UCL tear in his elbow. He's played through essentially having one of his fingers not connected to the rest of his hand. Like if Buckner has to be placed on injured reserve, it's the kind of serious injury that you should be worried about for the rest of the season. I think the other thing is, again, like outside of the stem cell stuff, Shane Steichen keeps saying, we hope we get him back. Not we expect him back, we hope we get him back. And that sticks out to me a ton, because usually Steichen doesn't give us a ton on injuries, but usually he will say, yeah, we think we're going to get him back at some point this season.
One of the things, speaking of that Shane Steichen said, and again, I apologize if I'm going over something here that you guys talked about in the last couple of days, but when Shane Steichen said that Anthony Richardson, like, he'll be the backup quarterback, I think he said, like, if he comes back, or when his verbiage on it was a little bit vague in terms of, do we have an understanding of when they expect that to take place, and why would there have been any question at all about the fact that Richardson would be the backup upon return?
I think it was just asked because, by that, it could be very long, and by that point you feel like maybe you have an established backup. If he doesn't play, if Leonard doesn't really play, I don't think that matters as much. But I do think that part of it is this was such a serious eye injury that I do think there is some question about, when he's going to be back, that recovery. We don't know exactly what all happened in that surgery, but just the fact that they placed him on IR, and Steichen keeps kind of pushing back on, he's going to be back soon. It's like kind of like the Buckner thing. It's an indicator that it's potentially fairly long term.
What things, Joel A. Erickson, Indianapolis Star, is our guest. He is on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. What about Kansas City jumps out at you? We know about Patrick Mahomes. We know about, obviously Kelsey and the different weapons they have and the players they can get in space, and Andy Reid's ability to do that. But defensively, where is Kansas City? What are the things that you think the Colts are looking at as areas they can exploit?
Well, I think the first thing that jumped out at me is that Chris Jones doesn't look like Chris Jones this year. He still looks like a productive starting defensive tackle, but Chris Jones is the guy for this team previously, and he just hasn't really been that type of player this year. He's been more of a solid pass rushing tackle versus the absolute difference maker. But just from a pressure standpoint, from a hit standpoint, from a sack standpoint, he has not been the same type of player. And I think that's the first thing that jumps out is do they have the piece that's supposed to be the tip of the spear for them? Is he maybe starting? He's played a lot of football over the years. Is he starting to get up there in years? Is he the same type of player? And then on top of that, you think, well, if you have a diminished Chris Jones and then you throw him in there against Quentin Nelson and Tanner Bortolini and Matt Gonzalez, you feel like the Colts have an advantage there, or at least I do, and maybe look a little bit different with this defense than it has in previous years.
Joel A. Erickson is out at the Colts complex. Joel, if at any point they decide to just open the locker room early and you got to run in there, just let me know. I mean, we totally understand it. Before that, though, two other things I wanted to touch on. The first being Daniel Jones and the Colts of late inability to feel as trustworthy in protecting the football and not turning it over. Does Shane Steichen come up with new offensive wrinkles? Are we at the point yet where they have to start looking at different things to do in terms of game plan or schematics to make sure that they are doing a better job protecting the football and not letting Daniel Jones slip back into the old Daniel Jones?
I think so, and I think they kind of the bye week came in a good time for them because the team he referenced in passing. This will shock you, I'm sure, that he didn't tell us what he came up with from their self scout during the bye week.
Shocking. Yes.
He didn't lay out what he found, but they just did a self scout, and I think that probably came at the right time for them with the protection stuff. He's kind of downplayed that over and over again, but he kind of downplays everything that could be schematic in some way or the other. So I don't really put much stock in that. I think that self scout probably helped them a lot on what the Falcons, what the Steelers were able to do to get pressure on a guy who before that hadn't really been sacked that much.
Okay, Joel, you went to Berlin, right?
I did.
Okay, so when you came back from Berlin, I don't know, I know that James, for example, James Boyd, who you hear on our morning show, the Fan Morning Show, I think he got delayed a day coming back because that was during the wonky stuff going on with air traffic and all that stuff. How soon after that game did you get back? What day did you get back?
I was back at 11:30 on Monday night.
Okay. How long on what day did you start to feel normal again? Because I was in Munich yesterday, and I got to be honest with you, Joel. As far as I know right now, I'm actually talking to Zach Osterman. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know what the hell's going on.
I started to feel good I started to feel normal on Wednesday, but while I was in Germany, the Erickson household got a stomach bug, and I thought that it was over. I thought I had escaped it when I came back. And so right when I started to feel good from that, it came back and got me, and then I didn't feel good. So, yeah, Wednesday was when I started to feel good, and then I quickly started to not feel good again because the three little Ericksons brought something back home.
You know what my understanding is, what is supposedly very helpful for the stomach bug next time it hits?
Huh.
Beer Fairy, just so you know. You got to let the Beer Fairy know, and then, you know what I mean? The Beer Fairy can make a special delivery, and then before you know it, everything feels normal again, right?
Is that the right medicine for it?
Probably not. Probably not.
Medically advised. I mean, I'm willing to try. I'm definitely willing to try. And
I would say probably not.
Does IU Health have a study? I'll volunteer.
Yes, I'm guessing they've done that and they have their answer, and it would be no. Just a hunch. Although, again, what's interesting though is I'm guessing there's probably medical studies in your home state of Wisconsin that say absolutely go for it. The beer fairy's all about it, right?
I would say the combined medical knowledge of dairy farmers from the state of Wisconsin going back to the 1800s would suggest that beer is the answer to all medical maladies.
I got to tell you, you got a couple of cold run ears in there, you'll start feeling better. Okay, lastly, before we let you go, give me the injury rundown. Get me up to speed here. Who we're looking at and keeping an eye on who could or could not be available in Kansas City.
Okay, so we obviously went through Ward. Jalen Carlisle is back at practice. I don't know what to expect from that one because he hasn't played it all this season, so I wonder if maybe he has to practice a little bit before he comes back. And then sounds like Anthony Gould's going to practice. That's big for punt returns. It also sounds like Samson Ebukam is back. The one that's interesting is Tyquan Lewis will not practice today, and he's missed 3 games. If you remember right, there was 1 week of practice where he practiced in full twice, and then they declared him out at the end of it, and we were all kind of surprised. I asked if he had a setback, and Shane just kind of said it just didn't get better, which we're starting to get into, like, you come out of they didn't put it, an injury that they didn't put him on IR for, and then we go through the bye week, and now he's not practicing on Wednesday. That's starting to feel like a concern going forward to me.
Yeah, the Lewis Lewis is interesting, especially because he becomes bigger if Buckner's not available, right? Just in terms of
Correct.
getting any pressure at all on the line, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, correct. Like if you look at their backup defensive tackles, Neville Gallimore already has a career high in sacks, and Adetomiwa Abare has been much better than he has been before, and so they're probably getting more out of those guys than they thought. But yeah, Lewis is absolutely the kind of guy who's rushed from the interior in the past and could help out with some of that Buckner absence. And yeah, Lewis ends up being a fairly large deal.
By the way, Joel, last thing here. Eddie just tipped me off to this. Do you have your own burner account? Is that right? On Twitter? On the Expos Twitter?
I used to have a personal account. I still have one, but I don't use it very often.
Okay.
Anymore.
I was getting, and you just decide. So now you're letting it all hang out there and taking your risks at the Star that you could just like get into something too personal and lose your gig. Are you one of these people that has in the thing like opinions are my own, like as if like you spout off on something completely absurd that like nobody's going to hold you to it?
It used to be like that's where I would put my Brewers stuff or whatever. But like as I've gotten older, I've gotten less online with all of my thoughts on all social media platforms. And so I think that's what happened to that account was I was like, I just keep it to myself,
Yeah,
I'll just sit in my living room and be like, oh no, Wembanyama's out for 2 weeks. What does this mean for the Spurs?
If you have to think before hitting send, you shouldn't hit send. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Easiest way to say it, yeah.
One of the favorite tweets of mine that I unearthed, Joel, during this discovery was, being married is awesome. So much food in the house and it's not all potato chips.
It's true. It is true. That's one of the best things is that there's always food.
Speaking of food, I brought you some back from Germany, Eddie.
Oh, really?
I got you some gifts, yeah. Joel, I did not bring any beer back from the beer ferry to bring you to Germany. My apologies, but the next time that the bug hits you, let me know, and I'll see what the beer ferry can do for you.
I'm telling IU Health, if they want to do this study, I will volunteer.
All right, much appreciated. Joel A. Erickson, we'll let you get back into the locker room. Appreciate the time as always.
You bet.
Joel A. Erickson, Joel Anthony Erickson, by the way. Ordinary Joe is what he was on Expos Twitter, but now he is, of course, Indy Stars. Joel A. Erickson joining us, Java House, Peel and Pour guest line. Yes, in fact, Eddie, I did bring you back.
You're too kind.
What time would you like your gifts presented?
Oh, you can pick. You can pick whenever.
By the way,
beggars can't be choosers.
A couple of things I wanted to point out now that I'm back, because I don't know if I'm the only one with this. The NFL season, what I always say, every year you hear me say it, when the Colts camp begins at Grand Park in Westfield, and I have kind of this uneasy apprehension about it. And people say to me, they're like, oh, do you have something against like Colts camp? And no, I totally understand why people love to go to it. Going out to Grand Park, I get all of it. And football's back. This is awesome. I get all of it. The thing that I always say, my only hesitation with it is the fact that once the NFL season begins, it's literally like you snap your fingers and boom, it's 40 degrees and colder. There's no worse weather than this right here. I'd rather it be, would you rather have sunny and 5 degrees or raining and cold rain and 38 degrees?
Probably sunny and 5.
Right. And this time of year, it comes like that, right? And so when I got back from vacation, I had an epiphany. I had an epiphany and an awakening and oh my goodness, that I needed to make sure that I told people about and alerted them to. And I'll tell you what that is next. And Eddie, I will get you your gifts before the end of the show today. Maybe we'll even do it next. On Query & Company, a Wednesday edition. Big show lined up, by the way. Mike DeCourcy going to join us about 30 minutes from now. We'll also talk to Ralph Reef. I want to find out more about this DeForest Buckner injury and what the stem cell stuff could mean. What could happen from that? Ralph Reef, 1:30 today. Matt Verderame, one of our favorite guests, 2 o'clock. Loaded show on a Wednesday. It's the Deinsfeist, right?
Yeah, did you get any of this?
This is Deinsfeist. This reminds me of the Techno Club. I was Techno Clubbing it in Munich until yesterday, about 5 in the morning.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did they play the Deinsfeist?
They did. By request. I just kept requesting it over and over. I know all the lyrics by now. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this takes me right back. Now, Deinsfeist, doesn't that mean my sweat? Is that right?
Yes.
So there was no Deinsfeist, by the way, at dinner in Salzburg, Austria during my trip. However, we went to a very cool, authentic restaurant, and it was packed. I mean, when I say authentic, I mean we were the only non-Austrians in the restaurant, and the people were great. It was beautiful. It was a cool little place. But we were sitting in kind of a high traffic area of the waiters and waitresses and everything else. And I see a guy coming out from behind the back delivering a tray with like 12 beers on it. And then I see somebody coming down the steps to my left, one of the other employees, and I thought, this has disaster written all over it. And before I could say anything, I hear this crashing noise, and I looked up because they collided. And I hear the crashing of the beer mugs all over the wooden floor. And when I looked up, I then realized that like 144 ounces of beer itself had to go somewhere, and it completely doused Shannon. Although, I mean, literally the biggest beer shower in the world. So she didn't have the Deinsfeist, but she had the Dein Brew in terms. And
were they golden? Were the beers golden?
Yes, in fact.
So it's her rendition of a golden shower?
That's exactly what it was, yes. Which I guess you would prefer the Deinsfeist, right?
Yeah.
But at any rate, great trip. And I got back and realized then I had this epiphany. When I got back, I thought, I can't believe that it is now week 11 for the NFL season? Or what are we at here?
Is it week 12?
Week 12, yeah, because you have the bye weeks and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's when it dawned on me that Thanksgiving is a week from tomorrow, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so a couple of notes here. First, in terms of next week, I'm super excited about this. It is not often that we can take this show on the road just because of the shift in which it takes place.
Well, not to mention, Jake, this is a dog and pony show.
It is that. It is definitely that, right? And do you know how hard it is to get both a dog and a pony inside of like the little kennel to travel them?
Yeah.
But we are going to be on the road coming up on Monday. Parks Place Pub, one of great location. I mean, an awesome spot up in Fishers. And we are going there for the Indy Ignite, and it is the professional volleyball draft that's taking place. And so what better way to celebrate that than to do the show, bring everybody out, enjoy yourself a cold draft if you'd like while you're there. But I'm super excited about it just for the chance, and you're going to hear me talk plenty about it between now and Friday. I would love to see as many of you as possible on your lunch break to stop by and say hello. It is not often that we get the chance to be out in the public with this show. And so for those of you that listen to it, if you are on the north side, if you're in the Fishers area between 12 and 3, Parks Place Pub, I would absolutely love to see you up there just off of 116th Street, just to the west of I-69. And I am super excited about that and look forward to being able to do the show on Monday. Then in terms of Thanksgiving itself, two things. Number one, for years, I have, and it has become our, literally a favorite tradition for my family, where we have had so many people and so many different friends that we've met over the years, where this all began when I worked in St. Louis and couldn't come home for Thanksgiving. And maybe I should have taken a social cue from this, that nobody that I worked with said, like, hey, do you want to come to our house for Thanksgiving? And so I didn't do anything for Thanksgiving. My mom was so mortified by that when I moved back to Indianapolis and worked at Channel 6, my mom said, why don't you ask any of your coworkers that can't go home if they'd like to come over to our house for Thanksgiving? And that grew into me on social media each year saying, if you are living in the Indianapolis area, but you cannot, and you're not from here, or just in general, if you can't be around family and friends at Thanksgiving and you'd like to come to our Thanksgiving dinner, you are more than welcome to do so. And we have a special placemat actually a tablecloth that over the years everyone has signed, and it's always great to get that out and see the different people that have come over the years, some of which come back, others of which have moved to other locations and you know, were a one-off, if you will, whatever the case may be. Had a lot of great people that we've met and friends over the years that we've enjoyed spending the holiday with. We can't do it this year only because we're doing Thanksgiving differently because of the situation with, that now that my dad has moved into a rehab center after he's had a stroke. So this year is going to be our 1 year, and I apologize to everyone for that. But this year will be the 1 year delay for that. Hopefully we will be able to resume that once everything kind of gets back to normalcy for us next year. But for Thanksgiving itself, I'll be doing the Drumstick Dash. This is a fundraiser for Wheeler Mission, and as part of my running for the Drumstick Dash in representing Radio 1, Urban One Radio, and this radio station in the Drumstick Dash, I will be putting out later today a link in terms of the fundraising where people can make a donation to Wheeler Mission on behalf of my run, and so we'll be doing that. Also, the other thing that I will start doing once we get around Thanksgiving time is Firefly and their Hope for the Holidays is incredibly important to me. And the different families and children that are registered through Firefly, formerly the Children's Bureau, that we do this each year of just letting people know about this, of where you can sponsor a family or a child and see their usually very humble Christmas wish list to purchase items for them. You can select a particular child to sponsor them. They make it super easy. They put links up where you can literally go onto Amazon wish lists and get things. And I mean, you're talking about kids sometimes that their wish is something like, socks or a pair of shoes. And so my goal again this year is to see to it that we get every single family and every single child that has registered to be sponsored for the holidays, for Hope for the Holidays, that we do that. And you'll hear me start profiling some of the different wish lists and things like that beginning at Thanksgiving and get that through to the holidays.
Something else I want to add, Jake. I know JMV is on remote quite a bit, usually on Thursdays and Fridays. If you're listening and you've got some toys for kids, I know that JMV will be having like a toy donation spot at all of his remotes now for the next month, I believe, for Christmas to give these toys to kids, obviously, anywhere from an infant to, I think, 15 years old. So if you want to do that, JMV will have more information on that as well.
Okay, yeah. And that, again, there's going to be a lot of different things that we have, right, to be able to help out for the holidays. So certainly look forward to getting the word out about all of that. All right, we come back. Pacers in action tonight, but college basketball. A couple of news and notes and observations about teams locally speaking, including one that you might be surprised that we're going to talk about. We'll do it next. So Purdue and Indiana are both unblemished at 4-0 in college basketball. And that was a really impressive win, obviously. For any win for Purdue, it's unfortunate for Purdue, both fortunate and unfortunate, that you would normally say, like a win over Alabama is a very impressive win, but we expect it with Purdue. I mean, they are a number 1 or 2 ranked team in the country, depending on when or what you believe, for a reason. They have the best player in college basketball. They have, and Braden Smith is such a unique player, but Trey Kaufman-Wren is pretty special himself. I mean, they've got, some, lawyer. I mean, I don't need to go over for everybody here, but Matt Painter, I just don't think we can say enough about Matt Painter and the job that he's done in terms of building a program that the program recruits the player. It sells itself to players to the point now where players have to then want to sell themselves to, certain places you got to go and beg a kid to come there. Purdue has gotten to the point now where kids want to beg to go play at Purdue. And yet Matt Painter has done such a masterful job of, and I heard him saying about this group, look, the thing about this group is I'm having fun. As a coach, I'm having fun. And I've had special players before that weren't as fun to coach. But when you're a coach, you want a group of players that bond together and do what you ask and buy in, and that's what Matt Painter has been able to do. And it pays dividends, and you can see it. And I just have the utmost of respect for that Purdue program. And so for them, look, I realize that when they went and they got beat by Kentucky in that exhibition, or when they didn't blow Oakland out by 35, people, what's going on with Purdue? And then they go and they play that Alabama game, and you go, yeah, okay, they are pretty good. And they're going to be, so long as they stay healthy, knock on wood, they're going to be right there in the thick of it for the totality of the year. It goes without saying. Indiana, and, I realize that Indiana, again, maybe for Indiana, I think for Coach DeVries and that group, the thing that he's done that is so impressive is you have players that are basically still wearing name tags for one another, and yet they look like they've been playing together for 2 years. The way that they space the floor, the way that their offense works, and we talked about it with Don Fisher, getting a quick look, and then if it's not there, kind of resetting in their ball movement and their understanding of movement of where everyone is on the floor. And that comes from, as I understand it, I've talked to people that have gone down to practices down there and watched them practice that said that the way that Darren DeVries runs his practices, it is very intentional. And, every moment of practice is deliberate and intense, and he works them hard. And there is accountability. And I think for Indiana fans, the thing they are the happiest about is it is a program now that looks at accountability. And the other program that I'm really intrigued by and optimistic about, and I'm not trying to carry water for it. I'm not trying to be Mr. Eternal Optimist, Mr. I bleed the torch, Homer, Indianapolis, none of that. I genuinely think this. I don't know how long, because you just never know if a coach has tremendous success at a smaller school, how long you hold on to him. And I don't know that he's going to have tremendous success. But I get the feeling that IU Indy, formerly IUPUI, Jimmy Cook is now the radio play-by-play voice for IU Indy, and I think he's going to call a lot of exciting games, and I think he's going to see a lot of exciting moments, because that, from a basketball standpoint, I think what Coach Hallett has there can be very similar to what Joe Tiller did when he came to Purdue football-wise and brought Wyoming's basketball on grass in this wide-open style that took the Big Ten on its ear, and it just had everybody going, whoa, what are we seeing here? the way that IU Indy plays and the offensive style they play, now that they're starting to figure it out, they're going to score in bunches. And then when you add into that they are building a brand new on-campus arena that's going to be right there at the former tennis center, I think the future is very bright for that program. And I truly believe that they are a year or two away from being a story from a, high-flying, scoring, leading their league type program where their games on that arena, on that campus, downtown Indy, are going to be a thing, and people are going to be like, man, this is cool. Like, all of a sudden, we got a team here that's winning 25, 28 games. That's really lofty, I realize. But I just love the way that they play because it is so unique in the horizon in terms of their fast style of play and scoring in bunches. But there's plenty to talk about in college basketball, and nobody better to do it than the guy who joins us, Mike DeCourcy, next. Today's going to be the day that I'm back in the saddle, back from vacation. Again, thanks to Derek Schultz, Greg Rakestraw for filling in, Eddie Garrison as well, allowing Shannon and I to take a couple of days to travel. Much appreciated. And, of course, I had an eye on college basketball and the things that were going on while I was gone. Joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Again, a reminder, go to javahouse.com, use the code word Jake25 for 25% off your purchase. And if you simply put my name in, Jake, in the search bar, you get the fan bundle, which is the Colombian coffee, the Wrangler Energy, and the Liquid Science hydration beverages, all right there for you in the Peel and Pour pods from Java House. Mike DeCourcy joining us now from, of course, the Big Ten Network, Fox Sports, also Sporting News. Mike, when it comes to college basketball, I wanted to begin with this, and kind of maybe an out-of-left-field question for you. But, you know, in my college years in particular, there was nothing that I enjoyed more than this time of year because of all of the different tournaments that would take place. Notably, the Maui Invitational was a big one. The Great Alaskan Shootout for years was a big one. And I realize now that we have, like, the Atlantis, and then I think there's one in Vegas. Have we gotten to the point where they have emphasized maybe one or two of these tournaments in terms of priority, and it has put some of the smaller ones in jeopardy, or am I hallucinating that?
Well, the Players Era tournament in Vegas that is funding those who participate at such a high level has made it difficult. I mean, we've already seen, you mentioned Alaska. I covered 2 Alaska shootouts, very memorable experiences for me back in '87 and I think it was 98 that I was there, and that's basically gone. And Maui, of course, because of the attraction of the locale, had continued to thrive until the arrival of this Players Era thing in Vegas. Exactly what the money thing, I don't get it. I really don't understand it. There's not that much money in these tournaments for them to be putting so much money into the programs and their players. Through NIL, I don't know where the money's coming from, to be frank, but it's there, and so schools are saying, hey, if you're going to pay us, we'll come, and so that's made it difficult for Maui to get fields as robust as they've had in the past. Even such a wonderful locale. It's another place that I was fortunate to cover twice, and wouldn't trade that for anything. Not even a lot of money to go to Vegas. But of course the Bahamas tournament as well is another that we had a great field a year ago and is down a bit this time around. It's not worth your while. It's still worth your while, but it's not what it had been, and the future may be dim for now.
You know, I thought it was interesting in Mike. You had an interesting comment the other day. In college basketball, I thought that I've always felt the importance of these tournaments, especially for schools that may be out of conferences that don't have, a ton of power at the top of the conference itself. It's your opportunity to get yourself quality wins for your tournament resume, is what I'm getting at in short here.
Right.
And that is such an important criteria for the NCAA selection committee. And the NCAA selection committee, to me, is so impressive because we can sit here and talk and argue about who should be the 68th team till the cows come home. But then when the games get underway in the NCAA tournament, you look at it and you go, it is unbelievable how appropriately seeded teams are once the games play. It plays out usually where it goes very close to form and you can see how well these teams have been vetted. And you made an interesting point. The college football side of things with their selection, it seems like, would you agree, and I think you would because I saw you saying this, it seems like it's not as finite an area in which the college football is determining their selection of playoff committee like the NCAA tournament, and they only have to do 12 teams instead of 68. Is there a disparity between the way these two processes take place?
Well, I will give some grace to the College Football Playoff Committee in the sense that they don't have the data that's available to the college basketball, to the men's basketball, the tournament selection committee, because there's so much more intersection. I mean, we're talking about it right now: Maui, Vegas, Bahamas, the games that will be played tonight. Chicago, we've got Illinois playing Alabama. I think it's in New York that UConn will play against Arizona. But we have all this intersection among all these leagues. And so we know which leagues are performing the best, whose teams are performing the best. And so when we get to March, we have a real good idea of who belongs. And the College Football Playoff Committee doesn't have that advantage to the same degree. We're inching toward it with the SEC announcing earlier that they will now play 9 conference games, which they've avoided for a long time, and then also require all their members to play a Power 4 non-conference opponent. And the ACC, I believe, did the same. I'm waiting on the Big 12 to do this. The Big 10 to do this, because I think it's really a necessity. If they are doing it, you have to, because your schedule strength has to be on par with theirs once we get into this era of greater data. However, even saying all that, I still think they're doing a horrendous job. It is amazing how bad they are at this. These rankings are just a joke. I mean, you want comedy on Monday night, you watch the medical show St. Dennis Medical. That's hilarious. And on Tuesday night, you can turn on the college football playoff selections and laugh just as hard.
Well, especially when they make the case of something along the lines of, between Miami and Notre Dame, we really take into consideration that, like the losses in comparison, and you're thinking, well, yeah, one of Notre Dame's losses is to Miami, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there seems to be a lot of contradiction there, but, but then again, Mike, let's face it. This is what we wanted, right? It gives us reason to talk about more teams in college football than we did, in the old BCS era, and whatever else, right? I mean, that's the reality.
Yeah, Jake, we wanted there to be, first of all, we wanted there to be automatic qualification. For me, that was a must-have, because it shouldn't just be entirely an opinion issue. A week ago, I wrote a column about this, that the president of Mississippi State, who also happens to chair the College Football Playoff Oversight Committee, said that they should get rid of automatic bids, and that he had the full support of the SEC in that. And by his quote, most of college football. Yeah, I'm sure the ACC and Big 12 are lining up to get rid of their automatic bids, as well as the Group of Five, who at least get one shot at the deal. I mean, it was just a preposterous statement. But so that was important. And then we wanted a few more teams to make sure that everybody that has a chance to win gets in. But we didn't want them to do it like they're the Marx Brothers or something. The Notre Dame case is really this. This is the Notre Dame case. They beat SC, which is a quality win, and they're Notre Dame. That's it. I mean, there's no other case for Notre Dame to make it like if they were the last team in at this stage or something like that, but to be firmly in with the possibility of playing a home game and all of that with what they've accomplished is indefensible. And like if you need to make a case for Notre Dame, a lot of teams have to lose and like take that, that old thing about the volunteer, and then everybody takes one step back and then they're stuck out there. That's what they need. They need everybody else to take one step back so they look like the team that the football committee is saying they are now.
But boy, Mike, I could not agree with you more on the fact of, and I've always believed, and I will die on this hill, that the eye test is one thing, but the reputation test is always there. And it is human nature that for a Notre Dame, or in basketball for a Kentucky, that if you are a quote-unquote bubble team, that you get almost a human nature benefit of doubt of the fact that you just assume that comes with it a better quality than, a mid-major, so to speak, that's having a great year. I've always believed that factors in.
I'm even okay with that, but they're not doing that. They're not sticking them at number 12 and saying, yeah, they'll get in, wink, wink. They're saying they're one of the higher-ranked teams, right, that are and that's just, there's just nothing to back that. It's all, well, they're playing well. I mean, well, yeah, but like Miami went out and smoked NC State on the weekend, on Saturday. So now they're playing well again, and they beat Notre Dame. Why doesn't that put them ahead of the Irish?
And it feels to me, and I don't have the schedule in front of me, Mike, but and I think Notre Dame is very good. I look and listen, I did not grow up in Notre Dame. I'm not a Notre Dame fan, is what I'm getting at. Okay, but
Yes.
Marcus Freeman, to me, he seems very likable, and they are playing well for sure. However, it seems to me and it feels to me like their quality of opponent was front loaded, and that they have kind of. And I'm not looking at their schedule in front of me, so maybe I'm wrong here. Notre Dame fans will certainly tell me if I am. But
no, you're right.
It's not like, sure, they're cruising along, great, but at the same time, they're in the lane that doesn't have a lot of traffic in front of it, right?
Right. The quality of their opponent was front-loaded, but they lost both of the difficult games that they played.
Right. Fair.
I have a friend who actually used to work at Notre Dame who said, to an extent, it's not their fault, but it's their problem that the rest of their schedule is abysmal. That Purdue's not any good this year, and Arkansas is so bad they fired their coach. NC State's not any good. The Pitt win was probably a half okay win, but not a great win. Pitt still has to play Georgia Tech and Miami over the course of the next 2 weeks. Now, if Pitt goes out and wins those two games, then they strengthen the quality of that win, and it knocks Miami out of this.
I was going to say, then it dilutes, though, one of Notre Dame's losses, right?
Yeah, I mean, it makes Notre Dame like, okay, now it's justifiable to have Notre Dame ahead of Miami at that point because Miami now has more losses, and at that point, Pitt may or may not, but probably won't be ranked entering the game, so it wouldn't be as profound a loss for Miami. So at that point, then you can start to make the case for Notre Dame having at least multiple quality wins. But at this point, Boston College, Navy is a good quality team, but in a mid-major league, there's just not enough there to justify Notre Dame being as highly regarded as they are by the committee right now. And hey, you know what? I did grow up a Notre Dame fan. When I became a journalist and all that, it's not a part of the deal anymore, but I did. And so this is nothing against the Irish in general. It's just that I think you've got to go by what happens on the field.
Mike DeCourcy is my guest from, of course, Sporting News, Fox, as well as the Big Ten Network. He's on the Java House Peel and Port guest line. Let's go back to basketball, Mike, in terms of the number one team in the land, and that is Purdue. And I was talking earlier before you joined us about just how much respect I have for Matt Painter and the way that he has built this program, the players that he has, the stability, which is so rare in today's college basketball, of roster from one year to the next. When you look at this team and the veteran level of Purdue, if you had to pick an area and nitpick an area where they could be vulnerable, it would be where?
I think the defense still has to show that it can be high level. It doesn't have to be elite, but it has to be high level. A year ago, they ranked in the low 50s in defensive efficiency at KenPom.com, and that didn't prevent them from getting to the Sweet 16, playing an eventual national finalist to within a whisker of victory, from playing having a very good year. But they acknowledged, even Matt acknowledged at a point in February, that he was not content with where their defense was. And so I think they're more physically powerful now. They have the rim protection that's provided by Daniel Jacobson at this point, 2.5 blocks a game. And so they have made improvements, but will they be significant enough defensively to play at the level that you need to play in order to win a championship? I think and when you're talking about what you have to be to be a champion, that is nitpicking to an extent. They're going to have a great year. There's no doubt about that.
Mike, when you look at the Big Ten, okay, and the teams in the Big Ten in the top 25, and in rankings at this point in the year, I realize college basketball-wise we know Purdue is justifiable there at the top. You start getting into the 15 to 25, you never know where teams are going to end up, but gives you a barometer, okay? Big Ten, you got Purdue, Michigan, Illinois, Michigan State, UCLA, Wisconsin, all ranked. Indiana's right there on the outside looking in. I think they're like second right now in receiving votes. I've been really impressed with Darren DeVries and that group in particular offensively, the cohesiveness of which they can kind of find one another on the floor for a group of players that are not used to playing with one another. Your overall impressions of Indiana, of either what has surprised you to this point or the area that you feel they still need to shore up?
Well, I think that it's hard to be 100% sure how effective this is all going to be until what happens in December is their schedule gets really serious really fast. They do get K-State on Tuesday, and I think that's a big game for them and one that would be really good for them to win. But then in early December, they have a succession of games, 4 games, two Big Ten games, neither one of them against the top, what we expect to be the top echelon of the league. Minnesota won on the road and Penn State at home. But mixed in that group is a game against Louisville on a neutral floor and then a road game against Kentucky. That's a really difficult 4-game stretch. Even though Kentucky played poorly last night, you still look at that being almost a month from now and one that will be a real challenge for the Hoosiers. And so that's when we'll really get a feel. But to date, they've been everything that they needed to be in order to have a successful year. They have shot the basketball really well. As you mentioned, they've been really connected. Averaging 22 assists a game. They've been outstanding in that department. They've got 2 guys averaging more than 4 a game. So they are moving the basketball, sharing the basketball, getting to quality shots, and converting those shots. They did blow out Marquette earlier in the year. Still not certain how good Marquette's going to be at this point. Maybe I'm doubting Marquette because of what Indiana did to them. But I will know more in a month or so. But I think everything that they've done to date has been pristine.
I thought the thing about the Marquette game, Mike, to me that was impressive, and I realized that Shaka Smart's group, like Indiana, he's got newer faces, right? That they're still learning each other as well. But I just assume, and again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Human nature says that you go with precedent sometimes with a program and say, well, this is what I think of them because that's what I've seen from them in the past. Marquette, Shaka Smart teams to me in general are extremely tenacious and unforgiving defensively. And for Indiana to put up 100 points on them to me was very impressive, even though that might be a Marquette team that is totally different in March defensively than where they are now. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, that has been what his teams have been, no doubt. This is a little different Marquette team because they're not quite as dynamic in the front court as they'd like to be, and they are in the back court, but I think sometimes they leak a little bit to the goal, and that's where they just don't have a last line of defense in somewhat the same way as Purdue didn't a year ago. That caused problems for the Boilers down the stretch, especially mid to late February of this past season. And I think that's Marquette's weakness at the moment. But again, you put up 100 points on any high major team, it's impressive. You had to do really good things, and that's what we were talking about before with the passing, with getting to quality shots out of their offense, with running good stuff, with running that stuff pretty crisply for, again, only having been this group has only been together since officially since the start of school. They can practice a little bit more now than they used to be able to, but still everybody else can too, and Kentucky hasn't figured it out, for instance.
Okay, Mike, lastly, when it comes to the Big Ten, I wanted to ask you this. You heard me mention everybody that's ranked, or at least that is expected to be, nationally competitive here out of the Big Ten. Give me the Big Ten team that Mike DeCourcy looks at and says, people might not be talking about them in November, but I've got a feeling by mid-January to early February, that's one of them that we could be saying to ourselves, this is a pretty darn good basketball team that is well coached and somebody you don't want to have to face. Not named Indiana, what Big Ten team would it be?
Well, I watched Nebraska the other night and was really impressed. They played against Oklahoma on a somewhat neutral floor in South Dakota, and they were really good. Price Sanford was magnificent in that game. We saw Rink Mast come back from having missed a full year to injury. You still have the coach's son out there playing hard. he's doing a terrific job. It's a nice team, and they're going to be a problem for opponents. I look. One of the interesting things that you can monitor at this stage is, and this is something that's of great importance, really, to both IU and Purdue fans, is what's the rest of the league doing? And a year ago, the SEC was just cleaning everybody up, and they wound up with 14 teams in the tournament. And it's only been 2 weeks, but at this stage, the Big Ten is 69-4. 69 wins, 4 losses as a league. Now, a lot of those wins are against the Scarlet Word and all that, but they've also played a significant number of games against the SEC. Michigan State's won 2 of them themselves. I mentioned that Nebraska over Oklahoma. That's another SEC win. And they've won games against major opponents as well. So far, the league has looked really strong, and that bodes well for all of the teams that, in terms of what their victories will be judged at in terms of the quality for seeding. And if it comes to that, I certainly don't think it will for Purdue, and I don't think it probably will for Indiana, but also selection. It'll matter for them as well, what the quality of their wins is. And I think a Big Ten victory is going to be worth a lot this winter.
Mike, I'm going to end with a question that I'm going to give you complete permission to this evening say to your wife. I did a sports radio show today, and this guy asked me the dumbest question I've ever been asked on a sports talk radio program.
Well, you sure you want to do that, Jay? Because she knows you.
so she won't be surprised is what we're getting at, right? She'll say it's par for the course. But honestly, I don't remember if I've asked. Sometimes it becomes difficult for me to remember like conversations I have on the air, off the air, that kind of thing. I don't believe I've ever asked you this. You are native to Pittsburgh, okay?
Yes.
And one of the things about Pittsburgh that I only recently became more aware of. As a kid, I was completely unaware of it, and I think a lot of people were, is the fact that Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Fred Rogers, and that program was done on public television, epicentered out of Pittsburgh, because he's a native of Latrobe. He had grown up, I think he was in the same class as Arnold Palmer as a kid. But I'm strictly curious. In the Pittsburgh culture, in the city of Pittsburgh in the 70s, when you had We Are Family and Willie Stargell and the Steel Curtain and everything that goes with the sports and the great sports in the 70s of Pittsburgh in the 60s, what was Fred Rogers in the Pittsburgh culture growing up in terms of, was he celebrated and known as Pittsburgh's own, or were kids growing up in Pittsburgh like I was in Indianapolis completely unaware that his neighborhood was in fact truly their own neighborhood? Just what kind of a presence was he?
He was a tremendous presence. I think that what you didn't realize at the time, like we had these various characters in local television here. There was a guy named Bill Cardille who did this Saturday night monster type movie thing, and it was called Chiller Theater, and they called him Chilly Billy Cardille. And so that was that. So we didn't know that Mr. Rogers was any different than that. I mean, he was huge here, but we didn't know he was huge there. I think that's the difference.
Right.
Like we had these different local TV icons, and Fred just kind of felt like Mr. Rogers felt like he was one of them. He was ours. We didn't realize that maybe my older sisters realized, like when Fred Rogers testified in front of Congress to help secure public television funding.
$10 million or whatever it was he got. Yeah,
they were aware of that maybe, but I, at that age, was not. For me, Fred Rogers was on Channel 13, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We watched it all the time.
Yeah, I just, it's one of those things that if I was from Pittsburgh, that would be the number one thing that I would be proud of, is the fact that was the city that was his home. You know what I mean? Like that it's just like such a ubiquitous presence amongst everything that was right about childhood in the United States. And to have that come out of Pittsburgh, if I was a native of Pittsburgh, would have been something, a feather in the cap. Although I did love the Steelers and Lynn Swann, I'm not going to lie to you. That's right there with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike, appreciate the time as always, and we'll see what happens with Notre Dame and the football side of things. Brent already sent me a text and said, this guy's crazy. His take on Notre Dame is wrong. I said, I told you, if you got to take on Notre Dame, it's wrong. Notre Dame fans will let you know, right?
Oh yes, I'm sure they're not happy with me at all.
Well, we appreciate the time as always, Mike.
Thanks, Jake.
All right, Mike DeCourcy joining us, Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Again, javahouse.com. Enter Jake for the fan bundle. Jake 25 for 25% off. There are question marks about the Colts in terms of their health status, including one player going outside the country to get treatment. What does it mean, and what does that treatment mean? Talking about DeForest Buckner, and a guy that can answer that, Ralph Reef, will join us next. Indeed, with the Colts injury report, Panama is key. We will get to that in just a second. Joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line, what has become a favorite segment on the program, and I appreciate everybody who's reached out to say they enjoy when Ralph Reef comes on, because what Ralph Reef does masterfully, Eddie, is this is a guy who has been an athletic trainer at the very top. I mean, I'm talking about coordinating training for Olympic Games, working with athletes all over the spectrum in every particular sport at the very top levels, the smartest of the smart, and yet he has an ability to make things relatable to someone of the mediocre intelligence of myself. And
right.
That in itself is a gift, right?
Yes, it is.
Reef Executive Performance Solutions is who he is with now, Ralph Reef, R-E-I-F-F, ralphreef.com, the website. Joining us now on the guest line. Ralph, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Jake and Eddie. Thank you.
I want to begin with this before we get into the injury question, because I know that you have done your fair share of traveling, and I was just asking Eddie this, and I'm going to allow you, Ralph, because I'm giving you this authority to declare and be the judge and jury on this question. Okay, I just went on a trip, and on my trip, we flew from here and had a 4.5-hour layover in Zurich, Switzerland. Now, we landed, they stamped, I had to go through customs in Zurich, they stamped my passport, and then because I had a 4.5-hour layover, I left the airport on foot, walked across the street, breathed in the air, took a selfie of myself, and looked around at the buildings around and the different things, and then walked back into the airport, took a nap or whatever, and took off. So my question for you, Ralph Reef, is this. Can I say that Switzerland is a country I've been to?
100%. Yes.
Yes. All right. It's on my list then. See?
I feel better about myself because I said the same thing.
Did you?
I did say yes.
Ralph, and this is a morbid way of looking at it, Ralph, but the way I looked at it was this. I'm like, wait a minute. Here's the bottom line. Because everybody's trying to determine, they say, well, you got to leave the airport for it to count and whatever else. And I thought, yeah, but then again, like if you die right there, then forever in eternity, it's listed that you died in Switzerland. So that should count that you've been there, right? Is that a morbid way of looking at it?
Well, it's a different way of looking at it, certainly. But yes, stepping outside the airport is that's part of the process. So count it.
All right.
Get the sticker. Put it on your map.
We'll ring it up. Okay. Speaking of leaving the country, DeForest Buckner did that. He went to Panama for stem cell treatment on his neck injury. Now, my question for you is this. We always hear this, Ralph. It's become a buzzword. And I remember when Peyton Manning, and I don't remember if it was definitive that Peyton Manning ended up getting a stem cell treatment, but there was rumor of that during the time that he had a neck injury. And at that time, it was almost like taboo. Can you explain to me what exactly stem cell treatment means and whether this is more routine than it was, say, 10 years ago?
Yeah, there's a lot to discuss and unpack, but let's stay to the point here. So there's an entire part of medicine referred to as biologics. So these are things that are typically of the human body origin that are either taken out of the individual and put back into the same individual. That's done a lot. In sports, we use PRP, which is protein-rich plasma, all right? And we draw it out of the athlete, spin it around, get the plasma really rich, and inject it back in. And so what you're doing is boosting the normal process of the human body to create inflammation, if that's what you want, and that's what typically occurs there. So biologics, there are knee injections of things that are done, all the joints and that type of thing. But the biologics is a maybe 15, 20 years that it became mainstream. We used them at St. Vincent Sports Performance when I was there. And going back to Peyton Manning, when Peyton, everything that Peyton did was top secret. He could have gone to CVS and it would have been secrecy, et cetera, et cetera. So the story around him going to Europe that's just the natural way things were done with Peyton. And but one of the reasons that people let me stay with stem cells a little bit. Stem cells, we have them. We all have stem cells. And as we age, which like a lot of things, stem cells become less effective. So what do stem cells do? Stem cells help us manage injury and decreased function. And so stem cells will sort of jump to the rescue within the body where there might be an injury, a bruise, a strained ligament, a broken bone. And stem cells will sort of reroute and go to that area and help to heal in that process. We lose those over life, and it can happen as, whether you're 10 years old, 15, 20, 25, 30, it's a downhill slide. So stem cells, they're natural. We have them. They lose their effectiveness. And so when you ask for stem cell therapy or a physician recommends stem cell therapy, it's to add that boost back into the body.
Okay.
Yep. And so that's what they do.
So is it like, for example, Ralph, and so I assume, and I'm not to protect here, we won't say specifically DeForest, but we're just going to make up an athlete, okay? So
yeah.
our fictional athlete, Nick is 30 years old, and he has something went wrong in his neck, or he's got a pain that
right.
So he goes and he says, I need stem cell. Does that mean that they are taking stem cells out of Nick, doing a process to enrich his own stem cells and putting them back in? Or does that mean that Nick is going and getting a transfer of stem cells that have been provided by a different human body?
So, great question. He left the country, and the reason that's done, and there's a whole medical ecosystem, Jake, around leaving the country. It's called medical tourism. There are hospital systems throughout the United States that have facilities, clinics, physicians, hospitals in very nice locations, okay? And one of the reasons they do that is because the regulations are less. So my feeling would be that our random athlete with neck pain said, I'm going to go to Panama because there's a stem cell clinic there that has less regulations than if in their facilities in the United States. So going to Panama, and not that Panama is the only location, but outside the United States, they can then take stem cells either from the individual, or more than likely, they probably took stem cells from an umbilical cord that you can get a certain type of stem cell out of the umbilical cord. It's a really long term, but mesenchymal stem cell that is available through umbilical cord. So in the embryos, and that's harvested and then put into the individual. That's my sense of why this athlete or a athlete or Ralph Reef would go to Panama for stem cells, would be to get this very highly potent and low risk stem cell. They're referred to as immunoprivileged.
But they are not. But that is not permitted in the United States.
It is, but it has to be regulated by the FDA for specific trials.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
Now, one other question on this. For example, Ralph, if I'm going to get a blood transfusion, I'm AB negative, right? So that means that I can only take I can take anyone's blood, but only people with AB can take my blood, right? Blood. We know about how blood typing works. Is the same true with stem cells? Does there have to be? Can Nick take anyone's stem cells, or does it have to be within a particular body type that Nick has that has to be matched?
Yeah, good question. And my understanding is that there does not have to be a match. And again, with this particular mesenchymal stem cell from an umbilical cord has an extremely low resistance or infection or reactive type of response. It's a low risk. So it can come from anyone.
Okay, Ralph, PCL injuries, switching from stem cells now into the PCL injury, which is, as I understand it, that's obviously part of the knee. We've seen it in an increase of this, at least theoretically. It seems like we're hearing more about it. Josh Jacobs is one. Drake London is another. The PCL injury in terms of a knee injury is on what level of severity, and is there a particular kind of strike or blow to a knee that leads to this versus, say, ACL, MCL, et cetera?
Yeah, well, first from the severity, based on the business of the NFL, any injury that limits top performance is serious, right? But if I were to have an injury to the knee, a PCL sprain would be one that I would prefer. It is in the there's four major ligaments around the knee. We're all familiar with the anterior cruciate or the ACL, and then on the lateral side, the LCL, and the medial side, the medial collateral ligament. That posterior cruciate ligament sits deep into the knee on the back of the bone, the femur, and it's sort of like it's a belt. So when you go into full extension and try to get into hyperextension, that PCL then gets into its full capability of providing support. But when you bend, flex, rotate, so forth, the PCL is sort of a passenger and doesn't really do much. So I've had several athletes, football, soccer, hockey, where the PCL has been injured. Depending upon the sport, you can put a pretty good strap on them, taping, and they can play with a PCL. If they are of the grade 2 where there's a partial disruption or even a completely torn, then it's a player and staff decision on when they come back. But PCL, it's usually occurs with a hyperextension injury. Your foot gets planted, your hip comes forward, and your leg hyperextends. It straightens out farther than it should.
So, Ralph, what we know is this, and tell me if this is a pretty good summary of it all, okay? With any injury or any sort of thing where you might need, like, for example, in the case of DeForest Buckner, the stem cells, maybe that means that he's feeling a pain that he wanted to go ahead and take advantage of the resource of something above and beyond what was available here, so he goes to Panama. Whatever it might be, if you are doing part of this as medical tourism to go where there's less regulation, if you are going to another country to do it, just make sure you're going to a facility outside the airport so you can then say that you were at that particular country, because then it counts, right? Is that's what we're getting at here?
That is exactly right.
Or if you do the medical tourism in the airport itself, then no one knows you actually went to that country because it doesn't count, right? And also, right?
Yeah, you could then be stealth. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
This might be a business venture we can go into, Ralph. We can
Yeah,
set up our
exactly.
own little clinic, right? That somebody already stole my idea of the rental units inside of an airport where you could, like, little cabins where you can sleep and all that. Somebody took my idea from that. So now we can do a medical tourism plant in some place and nobody knows. It's stealth. I like it. This is what we'll do.
You know what, Jake? I'm not familiar with them, but I would not be surprised if there are some places that are within or really close walking distance to hotels. That would be my guess. But yeah, with this stem cell thing, there's also the other thing, particularly with DeForest Buckner. He had this done before, so it's obvious, and he did well. And so he's a receptor.
Right.
which means he responds very well. And I would guess that he's done this to reduce inflammation in his neck. There's only three things that really become an issue in the cervical spine, making this very generic, but there's the spinal cord. It's not that, or it would be an issue. And then the ligaments. There's 10 ligaments around every joint in the cervical spine between the vertebrae, or the disc, the meniscus, the jelly roll, never thought I would start thinking about a musician when I said jelly roll.
That's
but anyway,
very hip.
yes, but you've got to. My sense is he had this done to reduce inflammation, and had it done there because he could get this specific stem cell that he has responded well to before.
Ralph, we appreciate the time as always, and certainly, the nature of sports is such that other injuries will pop up, and when it is the case, we would be happy to be able to invite you back on and have you on because it's always a good conversation. I appreciate it as always.
Glad you're back safe from your journeys, and thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Ralph Reef again joining us. RalphReef.com is the website. Quick recess. We'll come back. Matt Verderame, by the way, about 10 minutes from now. I've got gifts for Eddie. Gifts for Eddie to give out. We'll do it actually in about 30 minutes, but coming up, one of the greatest gifts on this show is whenever Matt Verderame joins us in his take on the NFL in only a style that Matt Verderame can do, and we'll do it next. 2 o'clock hour on a Wednesday in Indianapolis. For that matter, it's a 2 o'clock hour everywhere in the Eastern time zone. My name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison, the other voice you hear on this program. On a day when I am extremely grateful for Java House because little jet lag going on for certain. Have no idea what time it is for the most part, but not a problem. JavaHouse.com is the website. Enter my name. That's Jake, Jake, for the fan bundle. That's coffee, Wrangler energy drink, and the Liquid Science hydration. Joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line, he is with SI, that's Sports Illustrated, covering the NFL. Matt Verderame joins us. And Matt, whoever would have guessed it, that we would be at a point where the Colts would be relevant enough that this game is a big one in Kansas City. It is the only franchise Patrick Mahomes has never beaten in the regular season. You will only hear that 2,000 times between now and Sunday. But the question is, from the standpoint of Kansas City, what is it about the Chiefs that this year has made them more vulnerable than what we have seen in years past?
They've always been great when they've needed to be, and this year they've been the polar opposite of that. They have not been able to focus. They've had 5 losses this year. 3 of them they've had 10 or more penalties in those games. They've been a disaster on special teams. Not so much, they haven't given up a return for a touchdown or anything like that, but they've kicked the ball out of bounds. They've missed landing zones. They've had extra points get blocked. They've missed extra points. They've missed easy field goals. They've given up a ton of yardage in returns. So, and they've taken if they haven't taken the most penalties on special teams, they've got to be right up there. I mean, they've beaten themselves in a lot of ways. Mahomes the last 2 weeks has not played well. He's made some throws. He's also made some horrendous throws these last 2 games. And so I think, look, right now they smack of a team that just looks absolutely exhausted. They just look like they've run out of gas. And, maybe that's an oversimplification, but they look like a team that other teams are getting up for them and they're ready to play them. The Chiefs just do not look ready to play these games.
Could it also be, Matt, that, and this may be way off base because it almost feels like it's too obvious, but that Andy Reid is as great as he is and as gifted as he is an offensive, lab scientist and all of those things, so much of their offense was based upon the flexibility, the versatility of Travis Kelce, and now just simply put, with him getting older and being less available in some of those plays, that it has you kind of slowed down everything else within their offense. Is that too simplistic an observation?
No, I don't think it's too simplistic. Look, Kelsey's actually having a really good year. He's got the second most receiving yards in the league for a tight end. He's been much better than he was a year ago. I think he's in better shape this year. I think he'd tell you that. I think part of it, though, that you said that is very true. The Chiefs are somewhat a victim right now of their own successes. And that, like Andy Reid, they just have not changed the offense in years. And haven't had to. Like they've just dominated. And at times this year, they've been awesome offensively. They have had some games this year where it looks like they'll never punt the ball again. But the last 2 weeks, they've played teams that are, the Bills aren't a divisional rival for Kansas City, but they might as well be. They play them every year twice. And Denver, of course, actually is. And these teams know what they're doing. It's no secret. And in this game, look, Steichen was in the AFC West. He coached with the Chargers. He coached against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and he had a lot of success that night, even though they lost. Lou Anarumo has seen the Chiefs a million times. And that is the concern. If you're in Kansas City, are they going to do anything different? The Chiefs have been very good, for example, running out of under center plays. They've been awesome under center. They never do it. They will get under center. They'll run for 20 yards on 2 plays, and they'll never do it the entire rest of the game. And it feels like they are trying to manufacture yards instead of just letting their playmakers go out and make plays, because that's what the offense has been. And it's stale right now. It's stale. It's not working. And it's a problem. They are, if you look at throwing charts from Mahomes, they do nothing in the intermediate area of the field. Nothing. There's nothing in the middle of the field. There's nothing between the hashes. It's all on the outside. It's all short, or it's 50 yards down the field. And it's been a problem.
The Colts on the other side of it, Matt, and I'm curious the national standpoint of this. You obviously saw plenty of Daniel Jones in New York with the Giants, in watching the league. And of course, the narrative on Jones when he got to Indianapolis was, yeah, this is a guy that's a cast-off because he couldn't protect the football in New York, amongst other issues that rose up, right? We're starting to see a little of that. Is this – which is the real Daniel Jones here? Like, in other words, are we now finding out that perhaps the first 6 to 7 weeks was the anomaly? Or is this just like a little hiccup and he goes back to being what he was the first 6 to 7 weeks?
Well, I think it could be somewhere in between, honestly. Look, the first 8 games the Colts played, they allowed 9 sacks. They were tremendous up front. And then against Pittsburgh and against Atlanta, those two teams basically just said, we are blitzing as much as we can possibly blitz, and you're going to have to beat us doing it. And they sacked him 12 times. And he turned the ball over a bunch. Now, that's, to use the word you used earlier, that's an oversimplification of it. Like, there's more to it than just that. But, like, that was the kind of overarching theme. I watched every snap of those 2 games. It was those defenses basically just said, we're not even going to hide the fact we're blitzing. Do something about it. Now, in this game, it's going to be very interesting because the Chiefs have always been a high blitz team under Spagnuolo. But they have not blitzed very much at all the last couple of weeks, and they have been beaten in big spots that they are normally very, very good on 3rd and long. They're very good in those downs. And Bo Nix repeatedly beat them because they kept dropping 7, and the Chiefs pass rush outside of Jones and Karlaftis is a disaster. Nobody can do anything. So a lot of times the Chiefs have been pretty successful at, we'll blitz, we'll bring 5, we'll play some man coverage behind it. The secondary is the strength of that defense by a mile. And so I wonder in this game, based on the Chiefs' failures their last 2 weeks, the Colts' struggles to block on some of these blitz packages the last 2 weeks, I wonder if that's what this game's about, is what does Jones do when the Chiefs just bring 6 guys? And they just man up everybody on the back end and say, go ahead and do it, throw the ball. And I think that, I think if you're the Chiefs in this game, your number one thing is stop Jonathan Taylor. It's obviously not easy, but that'll be the plan. And number 2, it's going to be, we're going to heat Jones up like crazy and see what happens. And it's a dangerous thing because if you don't get home, the Colts have a lot of weapons. You got a problem. But I think that's probably what Spagnuolo is going to do in this game, is just go after him with a ton of blitz packages.
Matt Verderame is our guest, Java House Peel and Pour guest line. He is with Sports Illustrated, of course. You look at it right now, is Jonathan Taylor the front runner for MVP?
No, because look, in a just world, he should be. But he's a running back. I think he is absolutely the front runner, and it would almost be shocking if he didn't win as long as he stays healthy for Offensive Player of the Year. That I think he will win going away. MVP, I think, is at this point just a quarterback award. It shouldn't be, but it is. We've all turned it into that. Like, I think at this juncture, it's going to go to, I think, Stafford or Drake May are the 2 guys. If the Bills or even a Kansas City have some crazy finish, they win out or something, and the quarterbacks are outrageous, maybe one of them, but probably not. It's probably May or Stafford. Throw Darnold in there as kind of a dark horse. So this past week, I think probably took him out of it. Taylor has been the best offensive player in football. He, Jackson Smith, and Njigba. But it's just so hard. Taylor, to have any shot, he's going to have to rush for 2,000 yards. And we saw last year, Barkley was unbelievable for Philadelphia. And there was really no quarterback that had a great year. I mean, Jackson had the best year. He had 41 touchdown passes and 4 picks. And yet they gave it to Allen, who was, statistically speaking, was fine. But Barkley never really got close to winning it. I think Taylor walks away with Offensive Player of the Year, which is basically the non-quarterback MVP. But I don't think anybody who's not a quarterback is going to win the MVP.
Okay, Matt, I'm going to read to you right now. We're going to do this for both conferences, okay? In the AFC right now, if the playoffs were to begin today, which they don't, but if they were, Denver, Jacksonville, New England, the Chargers, Colts, Bills, and Steelers, okay? Aside from, I'll just put it to you this way. Of those teams that I just mentioned, give me the 3 that you're most sold on are, in fact, can maintain it till the end of the year legit. Well,
despite issues that I think are going to eventually get them in January, Buffalo, because of their track record. I would say Buffalo. Indianapolis at this point, look, I mean, they're going to win the division. I think Indianapolis clearly is a team that, like, I think at minimum should win a playoff game, and depending on their matchups, who knows, could get to Santa Clara. I would say New England. I know, look, the Patriots have played nobody, but they played the Bucs, they played the Bills, they were on the road, they won them both. Like, those are real wins. Now, look, other than that, it has been like just a ridiculous schedule. They basically play like the MAC all year long. Okay, but
they play only on Thursday nights in 40-degree weather in Maction, right?
Yeah, they played like the Ohio Bobcats last Thursday. I mean, it's just been unbelievable what a joke their schedule is. But I think May is legit. Vrabel's a really good coach. Like, but that's kind of the thing with the AFC. You look at the AFC, I could make a case for any of those teams outside of probably Pittsburgh and Jacksonville to win a game, maybe even win two. I could also make a case for any of them, including, by the way, Kansas City and Baltimore, should they get in. Any of them go to the Super Bowl, could lose in the first round.
Yeah, totally.
Wouldn't shock me. I mean, it's such a weird year. It really is.
Well, the same can be said. So I'm going to ask you the same question. Let me read off the NFC, okay? Philly, the Niners, LA Rams, Green Bay, Chicago, Seattle, and Tampa. Give me the three that you feel the most confident about of that group I just read off to you.
The Rams, the Eagles, the Seahawks, for me. Now, the NFC to me is a little weird. Like, so the NFC, I feel like the teams are a little more established. I mean, the Bears obviously aren't, but like the Bucs have been there a lot. The Eagles, of course. The Rams, of course. Assuming the Lions figure out a way to get in, I think they will. Like, they've been there. If the Packers get in, they've been there. But it's true. Like, I think the Rams are the best team in football. I don't think it's by a massive degree, but I think they're the best team. That being said, if the Rams are a 2 seed and the Lions are a 7 seed, I would go into that game being like, I don't know, 50-50. Like, who knows who's going to win that game? Then you look at the Eagles and you say, they can't score a point, but they keep winning. So, like, at some point, like, how seriously do you just say, hey, look, they're the best team? This year, I will say one thing for the playoffs, regardless of the conference. You are going to have a lot of compelling games.
Yeah.
Because who knows? I was thinking about this the other day. I don't think this is going to happen, although it is possible. There's a world in the AFC that the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Ravens are the wild card teams. Like, what do you do with that? I think all three of those teams would be like. Those teams would probably be if they went to Pittsburgh, Denver, New England. They're probably all favorites.
And what's funny, Matt, is I would agree with you that in your mind, the three best teams perhaps in the AFC or the things going into it, the teams we thought were going to be the strongest are on the outside looking in or on the cusp of it, right? Whereas, however, that NFC docket that I just told you feels like it has more depth of superiority. Would you agree with that?
Yes. The NFC, to me, has much more depth in the conference. But the thing with the AFC that makes it so hard to really kind of decipher, the Ravens, now their track record in the playoffs is a disaster. Okay, they're Dan Jansen in the Olympics until they finally won in Lillehammer, right? But their track record before that is they're unassailable. They're going to win 12, 13 games. They're going to be there. Buffalo, same thing. Kansas City, obviously, they're a dynasty. I mean, they've been there. They've done that. And so I think everybody looks at those teams and goes, okay, we know what they are. We know what they can bring to the table. Indianapolis is brand new, and with a quarterback that, let's be honest, a lot of people are still looking at and going, what are you really? Like, are you really capable of making a run like this? I think Seattle's kind of got the same thing, where you look at Darnold and go, love the team, but what are you going to do in a huge spot? It's an unknown. Denver, I think everybody looks at and says, defense is awesome, but do you really trust that offense in a playoff?
Right.
Like, and that's where we are in that conference.
So the Colts offense, I mean, with Daniel Jones, I want to go back to this. Matt Verderame, our guest from Sports Illustrated. Do you believe, I guess a two-part question, do you believe that Chris Ballard and the Colts brass are convinced and determined that Daniel Jones is in fact the long-term guy and they need to sign him, re-sign him? That's question one. And the counter or the other part of that would be, do you think they should feel that way?
So when they made the trade for Sauce Gardner, that told me everything I need to know about how they feel about Daniel Jones.
Yep.
Because if you're making that trade and you're trading away a massive chunk of your future,
yep,
you're doing that saying we have our quarterback. because you're insane if you're making that trade if you don't think you have the quarterback. Like I'll be very honest. I was surprised the Colts did that just because, first of all, Ballard, while he has made big trades before, I mean, he got Buckner and that cost a first-round pick. Like, he is typically not the most aggressive GM in the world. That was about as aggressive a move as you're ever going to make. But I was surprised in that regard. That being said, look, Gardner is a force. He's a game-changing player on the defensive end. I personally would probably tag Jones if they can do it cap-wise this upcoming year, because I just would want to see him do it again. My biggest fear with Jones is you just have one of these years where he's just great, and then you give him a massive, 4-year, $200 million contract.
You Kirk Cousins yourself, right?
Yeah, and you're sitting there like in week 9 next year going, oh, actually, yes, it turns out if the team blitzes, like it's over. That's a problem. You know, like
right.
You don't want to be in that spot where you're sitting there. I mean, heck, you know who the last big contract was like that was a disaster? Daniel Jones in New York.
Right. You're right.
When they gave him $4 and $160, and they were like, this is fantastic. And by like week 4 the following year, they're like, oh my God, what did we do? Like, I would tag him and play it out.
And I don't know Seattle's situation with Darnold, how many years they gave him, but it feels like, in fact, he's kind of the same guy, right, in the NFC?
Yeah, no question. I mean, I said earlier, I feel like they're like the version of the Colts in the NFC. And, that game last week, look, they lose to the Rams. Okay, fine. It's not the end of the world. They play them again later in the year at home. They can split the series. But you watch that game, I was sitting there watching, Darnold's just throwing pick after pick after pick after pick. Like, man, buddy, at some point here, like, that's kind of the knock on you is in these big spots, you're kind of a disaster. Like, and that's, I don't want to hear that, like, the Rams showed them a pressure. They just beat you in the playoffs. When you were with the Vikings, you ought to know exactly what pressure looks they're giving you. You ought to know that you should have been studying that tape for 6 months, especially going to Seattle. And you come into that game and you watch him just, even early in the year, they played against Tampa. And to his credit, he was very, very good in that game. At the end of the game, it's 35-35. They're in their own end with like a minute to go. And he just throws the ball right at Levante David. And they lose again. And you're like, look, both Jones and Darnold, they may end up going to the playoffs this year. Obviously, they're going to be there and be awesome. They also might go in there and go one and done, and then you got a whole lot of questions. Like, if I'm the Colts, I am thrilled with the way he's played this year. But I would probably try to tag him and play this thing out another year.
Okay, lastly, Sauce Gardner, your thoughts on that acquisition for Indianapolis and whether or not they can get return on investment because the investment was large.
Look, it's a lot. I'm not going to lie. It was a lot. I was surprised the Colts did it. I probably wouldn't have done that just because 2 first-round picks for me. Like, if I'm giving up 2 first-round picks, I'm getting like Myles Garrett. Okay, like I am getting a guy who just instantly, like every game, he's just an absolute. I mean, Micah Parsons was 2 first-round picks. That being said, Gardner is an excellent corner, and in Adam Rumo's system, you need to have guys on that back end who can play, because a lot of times with Lou, if he plays the way he wants to play, he's going to vary it up, and he's a guy who's multiple on his defense. But you want to play some coverage. Guys are going to have to hold up a little bit, do some different things, and Gardner can do that. Obviously, he's a tremendous player. So I like the contract he's on for the Colts. I like the term and the money. I think he's an elite corner, but. Yeah, it's a lot. Like that trade, if they go to a Super Bowl, that trade's, hey, fine. You'll give up those picks any day of the week. I honestly think in a weird way, I'll tell you how much I like that trade when I see how Daniel Jones plays out. Because to me, that trade was more about Daniel Jones than it was about Sauce Gardner.
What do you got upcoming at SI.com, Matt?
A whole lot of stuff. I don't know. I got my preview file on Friday, looking at the 5 best games. Obviously, Chiefs Colts will be in there. My good, bad, and ugly column that comes out on Sunday throughout the day, just breaking down everything we're seeing and kind of what it means going forward. So those will be the 2 main things, and then my quarterly All-Pro team comes out next week.
Cool. All right. Well, and certainly I can think of at least one Colt on that list, and perhaps there will be others. Yeah. We shall see. Right?
Yes, there will definitely be at least one Colt. That is a guarantee.
Matt, we appreciate the time as always, man. Love having you on. Appreciate it. We'll look for it on SI.com.
Anytime. Take
All
care.
right, Matt Verderame joining us, Java House Peel and Pour guest line. All right, when we come back, I've got a couple of gifts for Eddie and one anecdote from my trip that one observation I had about sports in Indianapolis and one anecdote also that I thought was important to share. We'll get to all that when we return here. Wednesday edition. It feels like a Monday to me. I'm not going to lie. Query and Company on the Fan. This was bumping everywhere. Hasselhoff, baby. Huge in Germany. So I'm back from vacation. We went to Vienna, Austria. And then from Vienna, Austria, we did literally an afternoon trip. We took the train to Bratislava, Slovakia, and went to essentially a river boat on the Danube River. Had a beer there, got right back in the cab, went right back to the train station and right back to Vienna because the weather was terrible. But it's 45-minute train ride from Vienna. Then in Vienna, I went to the birthplace of Amadeus Mozart, which was very cool.
Amadeus.
That's right. All about Falco, baby. And then went from Vienna to Salzburg, which is beautiful. And from Salzburg to Munich. And while in Munich, I did go to the 1972 Olympic Park where the 72 Olympic Games took place. That's the Olympic Games that are noted for three things. It was where the Russian team controversially beat the United States in basketball. Mark Spitz was the star of those games in swimming. And, of course, the biggest story, which took place 2 days after I was born, and that is the Palestinian terrorists that, kidnapped and killed 11 Israelis in Munich. And they have a memorial for that in the Olympic Park. The Olympic Park, right on the edge of that park, is the BMW headquarters. And when we drove in to try to find the memorial, I was trying to find where it was in this park, which is most of the Olympic venues are still there, including the original Olympic Stadium that is still in use. And I've pulled over and asked a guy that was working at the stadium. I said, hey, do you know where I would find the memorial park? And he started to answer it. And then he said, by the way, how'd you get back here? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, to get to this area, you've got to have like a placard on your car and a security clearance and everything else. How did you get back here again? And I said, I'm not going to lie to you. That's like the most common question people ask me at most places where I am in my life. Just like, how did you get here? And Shannon the whole time is going, we got to leave. We're going to get arrested. Hey, Shannon, that's fine.
Shannon, I can talk us out of this. Come on now.
That's right. But I did want to bring back gifts for Eddie. And I wasn't as thorough with my shopping and things like that as usual. So, but I did go to, these are not from the airport. I went to an authentic grocery store. Admittedly, you could probably go like across the street to the Quarry Gas and Gulp and get these as well.
So no shrimp chips this time, right?
No shrimp chips, but almost as good. It goes without saying that if you're going to be in Germany, you got to bring back just gummy bears, right? Because I think they were invented in Germany.
Oh, really?
So here's your first, just a packet of fruit-flavored gummy bears, right?
Okay.
Then
I wish I could read this other than the company.
Well, this one here, it says that it's vegan. Now, there is somebody who claims to always be my best friend just because we did radio together long enough, and I think he would be sad to know, even though he was filling in for me last week, that torch now, that title now belongs to you, Eddie, because you're the broadcast partner. So,
okay.
Based on, and I can't read what kind of gummy bears these are, but except for that it says they're vegan. I don't know what that means. I mean, are most gummy bears made of pork? I don't know. But this vegan gummy bears, but you'll notice, if you will, please, the title on this one, if you can decipher what that says.
I do not know.
Well, you can figure out what the two words are there, right?
I don't know.
Below. Best.
Oh, look at that. I thought you were talking about up top. No, best friend.
Yeah, that's right. And then lastly, it goes without saying, if I'm bringing you back treats like that, I've got to give you this one, right?
Is this watermelon? It is.
Watermelon gummies for Eddie. Those are straight from Germany.
Or Wassermelonen.
That's right. So
thank you.
Here's the one thing on the trip that I did want to share. And I don't want to be that guy that's like, hey, do you want to come over and see my slides of my vacation? Nobody cares about that. I get it. Nobody cares about the vacation. I get that for the most part as well. But the Olympic Village in Munich was, it was the famous photo of the 72 Olympic Games of the Palestinian terrorist that is standing on the balcony of the Israeli Olympic Village. That building is still there, and it's right in the shadows of where the memorial is, and that was surreal to see that. But I wanted to share this, and I appreciate if you can lend me your ear on it, because I felt it was important. When I was planning the trip, Shannon is a travel agent, and she said, you know what, Jake, we should fly back from Munich as opposed to Vienna because in case a flight gets delayed or canceled or whatever, there are more flights out of Munich and more direct flights to the U.S. There's less chance of error flying back from Munich. So I said, okay, fine. So I knew that we were going to be in Munich and go there for 2 days. We got to Munich on Sunday evening. Of course, if you're going to spend an evening in Munich, I had never been to Munich. I was highly impressed with the city. It was beautiful, spotlessly clean. People were friendly. I mean, everything about it was great. So we went from our hotel to the Hofbrauhaus, I hope I'm saying that correctly, which is the famous beer hall in Germany. And we got a cab, and we get in the cab.
Not the place where Shannon got beer dumped on her, right?
Not the place where the beer dumped on her was in Vienna at a restaurant, correct. So we go to the Hofbrauhaus, or however you say that, but we get in the cab, and we're cruising along. It's a Mercedes station wagon cab, by the way. And I looked down, and I said, Shannon, it says kilometers an hour, but we're doing 203. It's 203 or 205 kilometers per hour. And I get out my phone and translate it, and we were doing 126 miles per hour. And that's when I realized we were on the Autobahn. And it was the smoothest. It was like driving down the straightaway of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It was incredible. But the last day that we were there, and Shannon is the one when I mentioned that we were, okay, fine, we'll fly out of Munich, and so here's when we'll get there and whatever else. And I said, we'll have Monday to do whatever we want in Munich. And she said, Munich is like 30 minutes from Dachau. And what I knew of Dachau is the concentration camp, the Dachau concentration camp from the Holocaust and World War II. And I said, well, that would historically to me be significant to see. And she said, and I'll never forget this as long as I live, she said, I want to go there, and I think we need to go there, Jake, because it's our human responsibility. It's our human responsibility to go and see Dachau. And after all of the things that we had enjoyed and seen and celebrated on the trip, on Monday we drove the 30 minutes or so to the Dachau concentration camp memorial site. And I put into my Waze how to get there. It's literally like going from Indianapolis to, Frankfurt probably. I mean, it's like 30 minutes outside of town. Frankfurt, Indiana, I mean. And I did not realize, and I apologize for my ignorance of this, I never knew that Dachau was actually the name of a town. I just assumed it was the name of the concentration camp. Well, it's a concentration camp that happens to be in the town of Dachau. So when I put it into my Waze and I'm driving there in the rental car and I'm thinking, this can't be right. And it takes me to this town that was a completely quaint and cute little village with chateaus. And I mean, it was a gorgeous little area. And it says, you've arrived. And I thought, and then that's when I realized that it just took me to the town itself. And I thought, well, how in the world can there be a concentration camp? This can't be right. And then I put in the memorial site and realized I was 0.4 of a mile from the epicenter of this beautiful village. And it seemed surreal to me. How can this camp be right here in the shadows of this quaint little town? And I didn't even realize that it was there. And then I realized the historical significance of that error. Because during the Holocaust, that's how it was. Theoretically, you had this concentration camp on the other side of the walls that people didn't even know was there because they were lost and confused and focused on their own misdirection. And that seemed fitting, that it took me the wrong place. So we went and we parked, and it was 40 degrees and cold rain when we got there. And that also seemed fitting, because just everything about being in adverse and less than ideal conditions almost seemed appropriate. But we got to the concentration camp, and you can only imagine what it's like to walk through the gate. And we did a self-guided tour. Obviously, you can do tour guides and that kind of thing. But they have everything, marked perfectly and very descriptive and explanatory and everything else. So we walked in, and you see the barracks, and you see, you can very visibly see the railroad tracks. And the concentration camp itself had formerly been a factory. And when the Nazis first took over the camp, it was simply a prisoner work camp where they were going to produce porcelain and be the world's leader in porcelain. And that was the guise under which, when the Red Cross or other people would come to check on what was going on there, oh, well, this is just where we have prisoners working there. Oh, okay, well, that's fine. And this was in the early 30s, and then it escalated, of course, into the concentration camp that it tragically became. And it was not to the level of Auschwitz or others, but that's irrelevant. There were 1,200 of these camps roughly throughout Europe. And when I went through and walked through the area, you go into the gas chamber. And you walk into the gas chamber, and you can still see on the wall the spigots where people thought that they were going to be taking a shower. You can still see the areas where they pushed in the canisters of gas. And then adjacent to that, you go into the crematorium. And then when you leave there, you go into the memorial that is the mass grave sites of those that were lost in the Holocaust. Many because they were Jewish, many because they were Russian, many because they were gypsies, a number of different, all totally, obviously invalid and absurd reasonings in this atrocity against humanity within our history. But as I was looking at it, and then I turned around at one point to Shannon and I said, do you realize that when you moved to Denver when you were a kid, that was only 30, a little over 30 years removed from when this was all happening. And you realize then how recent a history this is, even though it feels so far away, but yet it doesn't in many aspects. And as I was sitting in the gas chamber and I was reading the placard, there was one other person that was in the room. Shannon was off, in a different area, but there was one guy reading it also. And I didn't know him. He was a little bit younger than I, and I'm guessing he was German or Dutch. But when we were reading the placard, I don't know how to explain this or describe it, but I literally wanted to turn around and hug this guy. I didn't know him, but in that moment, what I was experiencing, what I was feeling, the power, the grip of all of it, there was only one other person on earth in that moment that could relate to or feel exactly what I was feeling, because he was standing right next to me. And you know that when you're standing there, it is impossible as a human to not have the same moment, the same experience. And even though this was someone that doesn't speak my same language, that has no similarity in my background, that has no idea who the Colts probably are, in that moment, we shared one common thing, and that is that we were both human beings. And the fact that this was a place that recognized that there was a time and a place in this world where people didn't understand that there can be that common ground no matter what your differences and backgrounds are, was an extremely powerful moment. And as I went through it, and we were there for probably 3 to 3.5 hours and read the placards and looked at the photos and grasped and absorbed that on a dreary, rainy day, we were able to leave. We were able to leave. And all I could think about was Shannon saying that going there was our human responsibility. And in doing so, all I could think to myself when we left is that we never again should allow any group of people or any individual to again ever in this world be marginalized because they're different. And an understanding and a grasp of that is, in fact, our human responsibility. And it was a very, very powerful thing. And if you are ever in a situation where you have the ability to go and visit one of those sites, I think, in fact, it is exactly that. We'll come back. J&V will join us. We'll find out what he's got lined up on the big show as part of the crossover, and we'll do it next. By the way, Pacers in action tonight. Eddie, they are taking on the Charlotte Hornets. You will be working that broadcast, right?
Correct. 6:30 pregame with Pat Boylan, Mark Boyle, Eddie Gill. 7 o'clock, and then the world's greatest postgame show after with Eddie White.
We have tickets to give away, correct?
We do indeed.
Big Ten Fan Fest. This is going to be a week from Friday for the Big Ten Championship. It is awesome. You go there, they have all kinds of stuff displayed for the Big Ten schools. Typically, they have the Heisman trophies that other Big Ten performers have won
Technical
on display.
foul on the producer here. It's a week from Black Friday, so 2 weeks. December the 5th.
Is that okay? That's right.
Yeah, technical foul on the producer.
My days are all no, that's on me. My days are all confused. Either way, though, I think everybody knows December 6th at the Big Ten title game. It looks like it's going to be a collision course between Indiana and Ohio State. We shall see whether or not that comes to fruition. But Indiana will be playing Louisville at Gainbridge Fieldhouse on December 6th, Big Ten title game that night at Lucas Oil Stadium. So the day before that, on Friday, a week from Black Friday, available from 3 until 9 o'clock, the Big Ten Fan Fest. We have a 4-pack to give away for you to go through. It is tons of fun. Usually the Big Ten Network is broadcasting live there. They have all kinds of displays celebrating, and it's going to be a big one, especially if it's Indiana and Ohio State. In what fashion are we giving away the tickets, Eddie?
There are 4-pack of tickets. I don't know if you said that or not, but you want to do caller number 2 and 4?
We could do that.
All right, yeah, caller 2 and 4.
So if you're still listening to the show at this point, callers 2 and 4. We will give away
317-239-1070.
Boy, I'll tell you, the Pacers game tonight, and Charlotte, interesting because last year the Pacers, the Hornets were like the one team early in the year that the Pacers just could not get a stranglehold on. And I realize now that Indiana, the way that the season has gone, I mean, who ever would have thought it would be like this? I mentioned earlier that when I was coming home yesterday, the flight that I took leaving Munich, Germany, they said, like, oh, folks, it's going to be a smooth ride. Sit back, relax, and watch a movie. No problems. We have no signs of turbulence ahead. And about halfway through the flight, the bumps started coming, and before you know it, it was like a free roller coaster ride over the ocean. And you thought it was going to be smooth sailing, and it was bumpy as all could get out. And that kind of feels like the Pacers season. Yes, without Halliburton, you knew there was going to be a bump to begin, but certainly not like to this level. And then the second flight I took from Indy to Charlotte, they warned us ahead of time it was going to be turbulent all the way through, and it was smooth sailing. I mean, we did not hit any at all, and that kind of feels like the Colts season. You thought it was going to be bumpy. You thought it was going to be a rough ride, and it has not been by any stretch of the imagination. J&V has arrived. He's got his Indiana State T-shirt.
Welcome back, Falco. How was everything? Did you rock Amadeus?
I did. I went to Amadeus's residence. I saw where Amadeus was born.
See, I'd go into Falco's residence.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Vienna calling.
Didn't he just pass away, Falco?
Oh, he's dead. Yeah, I don't know when it was, but I know he's dead. For sure.
Das Commissar, wasn't that his other big hit?
It was, and then they had to Americanize it and put After the Fire in there.
Correct.
Der Commissar.
You got a big show lined up, right?
Got a big show lined with a lot of hoop today. Did you get the reference? If you loved Merle Harmon's Fanfare, you'll love this show.
I did love Merle Harmon's Fanfare.
I did too, man.
Did you ever know Dave Gentry?
Dave
Gentry worked, Brian Evans would know him. Gentry worked, he ran the Big Red gift shop inside Assembly Hall for years, but before that, he was the manager of the Merle Harmon's Fanfare in Bloomington.
In the mall, in the college mall, Merle Harmon's Fanfare. I had a friend of mine that used to get. He worked at Otis Elevator right out of high school. It had a lot of money and just spent it on. Then he bought all these different jerseys. He brought a Tom Brunansky Cardinals jersey. This is one they made, but the best one, Greg Jeffries.
Yeah,
of the Mets. He got a Greg Jeffries jersey, but they spelled the last name wrong. So he ran around with Greg Jeffries' name spelled wrong.
I do remember Greg Jeffries'
back.
rookie card. People were like, man, hold on to this rookie card. This guy's going to be –
Yeah.
Greg Jeffries and J.D. Drew are two guys that when they entered the league, it was both of them were like they were going to be the next Mickey Mantle.
Well, it's funny is my friend Andy Harper, and he was notorious for getting jerseys of players, and then a month later they'd get traded.
You know
Every
what?
single time. Tom Brunansky, Twins, Cardinals, Greg Jeffries, Mets, Tigers.
I had a buddy
Barry Bonds to the Giants.
I had a buddy that paid for a custom-made Arnold Mickens Colts jersey, and like 2 days after he got it, Mickens got released.
Yeah.
That's the thing with jerseys, man. I mean, it's a tough deal because then you're stuck with it, right?
Did you guys have a good time over there?
It's great.
I bet.
The weather was not great, but it was great, man. And I appreciate you
Did you guys
taking over early.
go into discotheques like the Sprockets when you were over there?
I'm telling you, Munich was cool, and I got to ride on the Autobahn. That was the best thing about it. 126 miles an hour in a cab on the Autobahn.
Is Shannon
great.
listening right now?
I don't know that she knows what I do for a living.
How much
actually-
how much smoke was over there, buddy? You notice any smoke?
You know what? We went to Bratislava, Slovakia.
Oh,
Former
Slovakian
Czech,
smoke?
the former Czech Republic.
Whoa.
But it was like 45 and so foggy out. I couldn't see anything. You couldn't see 8 feet in front of you. So I could have been. It looked like smoke all around, but it was fog.
I just didn't know if they're really hot chicks and they all smoke like carton of cigarettes a day.
The airport there, like every 20 feet in the Munich airport was a Camel smoking lounge. So there was smoke, just not the variation that you think, right?
Oh, man, I bet that was
Here's the
fun.
thing. You ask if Shannon's listening. No, she doesn't start listening until 5 minutes from now. 3
All
o'clock,
right.
she's locked in.
That's why we love her.
She's completely locked in at 3 o'clock.
Are you guys going to this game later on tonight?
I am going tonight. Yep. I'm going tonight. Pacers and Hornets.
Have you guys been down on level 2 of the parking garage here? Have you? Do you think any of that sewage down there is coming from the Conrad? Do you think that's anything floating around that the Hornets left in the Conrad?
Put it on eBay.
Good luck. Yeah, good luck. Hey, there's LaMelo Ball. Look. that thing's getting flooded down there. Hey, what was that Stallone
really?
movie in the 90s?
I'm parked down there.
What was that Stallone movie in the 90s where the tunnel flooded? There was a Stallone movie, right? The tunnel flooded and like the Lincoln Tunnel flooded? Nobody?
No.
Anybody?
Hold on.
Just out of curiosity, because that's kind of what it's looking like. I don't go down there
Andy
either.
Dufresne, but
Todd Meyer was telling me that, and I go, man, I don't venture down there. There's probably some like trolls and stuff hanging out down there. Daylight.
That's it.
James is on top of it over there. That's like the first. James, well done, buddy.
1996, though. 1996.
Yeah, well
Daylight.
done, everybody. There we go.
All right, J&B's up next. I'll be back with you tomorrow at noon. Thanks for listening to Query & Company.